With an agenda, we can go ahead and call to order the work session of the Kent County Board of Commissioners to address the updating on where we are with the ARPA process. So, anything you need to say? I will say, in general, we have been working extensively at the staff with Jenny and Lori and others and Al on processing the many applications that we have, both internal and external. The folks at Guidehouse have been doing the analysis. I know that David's behind the podium, I'm sure, somewhere. There he is. So they have been doing the analysis that they were requested to do under our arrangement with them, which was do the eligibility review. And I think what we are going to get today is a report from David with respect to that. You will have a listing of all of the applications or proposals here. And then when we get through that, Jenny, are you going to do a process review that will describe the proposed process for moving us from where we are today to decision-making on funding before the end of the year? Preferably the end of November, but maybe the end of the year.
Do we have to sit in here until the end of the year?
You have to what?
We have to be here until the end of the year?
No,
Feels that way.
just,
Feels like it was just today.
just Tom, you would have to be here. So, no, and we'll get to the process, and I think we're trying to set this in a way, because there's some heavy lift in this analysis, no question, but we're trying to do as much of this where you can do this on your own time, access the application information, do the data review, do your rating and measuring. Instead of doing it in a 10-hour session, you may want to do it an hour a day for, I don't know, whatever. So we'll give you that flexibility, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So other than that, I will go ahead and ask Dave to start us out with the report on the status of where we are.
All right, thank you very much. All right, this is the final report on the community engagement from Guidehouse. Final report goals. Of course, number one, we want to make sure we've taken all of the data that we've pulled together and layered that and organized that for you so that it helps you make decisions as you go through your review process. And then, of course, we're covering the other goal of fully complying with the community engagement requirement for Tier 1 governments by the U.S. Treasury. So we are completing that process today. A lot of the data you saw last time hasn't changed. The data that has is here in front of us. So we did re-theme everything according to the ideas and proposals and match those all up. So the new updates here, proposals by theme, way down here. Parks and Rec, as you can see, and Workforce Development are far above kind of the rest, but you can kind of see it cascading from left to right here. One thing I want to point out is for each of these touch points, you get a different type of person that engages, and I think that's an important thing to think about as you go through this. We always see workforce development as being something with a lot of proposals, because the type of people interested in workforce development also are very good at doing proposals. So I think it's just something to be aware of and think about as you work through this. But again, these are the proposals, fully scoped out with budgets. And then, of course, we've got the ideas. And this is where we see still Parks and Rec there at the top, but we do have that Rockford Ice and Turf as an example of a specific idea that came through a lot, and then working down affordable housing, roads and transportation, and mental health being the next kind of tier there of ideas by theme. So I want to talk about how we're going to pull this all together. So you've got in front of you a full chart of all the information, and some of you this may be helpful to some not others. But what we've got is you've got two ways we're grouping. We're grouping by those priority groups, as you first set out, and also by themes, so that kind of a more narrowly grouped thing that also allows us to see a theme that might cover multiple priority groups. And then we said, well, how are we going to rank this, right? So we've got the proposals. How many proposals came in? How many ideas came in? And then how did those survey responses layer in with everything? And so what we've done here is we've actually just given a rank to each one of those individually and then created a composite score. And this is not to say a scientific score, but it's just a score to give you a sense of how can you understand all this data and create some sort of trajectory on what is at the bottom and what is at the top and how do things kind of lay out here. So I'll take a second with that. Does anyone have any questions kind of on how that process works and what that looks like?
David, just to get confirmed, the internal projects that came through the system, are those in government services list? Or?
Nope, this is only community projects
Okay,
here.
so the government internal.
The internal
department
ones-
requests are separate.
Yep, those will be layered into the proposals you all look at, but in terms of the community engagement part, we're focused only on the
Got it.
community's actual ideas and proposals.
Got it.
Yep. And so you can see here, this is kind of a full theme by rank composite score. Now, want to note one thing, we did remove the Rockford Ice and Turf just to not skew the data because it was such a unique kind of thing in campaign. But you see kind of top left, our first one, Parks and Rec, all the way down to bottom right, hospitality. And so this, as you're going through some of the proposals, this might help you scope out what also aligns with what the community was saying and kind of inform your decision-making as you work through that. And then I'm going to dive into the top 8 here so that we can kind of look at what does this actually look like. So for instance, Parks and Rec, that covers the both two community groups, or priority groups, quality of life and community health, and that's definitely laid out in the final rule as that's a big health factor. 52 proposals and 277 ideas, and then when you look at that, if you were to do something in this area, it would align with 58% of respondents' first choice when you align the theme and the priority group together. Affordable housing, community health, 13 proposals, 87 ideas, 36% alignment. And so that works down, mental health being your third, and workforce development being your fourth. And then your next 4, medical care, arts and culture, government services, and homeless support. So this is just kind of how the data lays out as you start thinking about this. Any questions? Yeah.
2 quick questions. The ideas take together both things mentioned in the broader survey and the proposals, or just the broader survey alone?
So proposals are anything that came in through the proposal portal with a budget, and any ideas came through the survey, but it also, we pulled any proposals that didn't have a budget, and so we decided to recategorize them as ideas because that's where it felt it fit more.
Okay.
Yep.
I wonder, yeah, then the second question is, I'm seeing, like, for instance, in these rankings, like between slide 1 and slide 2, if you go to slide 1, nope,
Oh, sorry. This one here.
there we go.
Right, yep.
Yeah, I'm seeing like workforce development, not criticizing it, but it says would align with 8% of respondents' choices, but then I go over to the next slide, and I'm seeing medical care would align with 36%, 22%. So is the
Yep.
composite score based on the number of ideas provided or the alignment with
No,
percentage?
so the survey is simply saying, because we asked people, what is your number 1 priority group? And so we're saying, if you were to do something in medical care, you would be able to tell the community, we did something that 36% of respondents said was going to be their number 1 choice.
Okay.
So that's how that, and as you can see, some of these were multiple priority groups, which meant that it's broader and it's going to capture more of those first choices.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. And as we kind of have gone through, top responses, my metric, of course, proposals, Parks and Rec, ideas, Parks and Rec, and number 1 choice, Parks and Rec and Arts and Culture actually were the same on that one. So then we go to next steps. So community proposals are going to be available for you all to review on September 1st. We're finishing up our final kind of cleanup of that. One thing to note, due to the Open Meetings Act, no discussion or commenting on proposals should happen outside of Board of Commissioners public meetings. And then Guidehouse is going to be available throughout this process to answer any specific questions you've got. So as you work through those, please feel free to share them with administration, and they can pull that together and pass those along to us. And then the final thing I want to say, when you look at this, you're going to see everything that was submitted through the proposal portal when you're looking at the proposals as it was written by those people. And there's a section at the bottom that starts kind of getting into Guidehouse and the county's review. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about what are you expecting to see there as you go through this. So the first thing is eligibility. Is this eligible under the rules? And we've got a green, yellow, red metric on that. So simply green is it seems 100% eligible, yellow potentially eligible with risks and gaps, and red ineligible based on current information. And I do want to be clear on this. We are responding to the information we're given here. As I've done many of these, you get more information and these things start changing. So the devil's in the details. So this is a preliminary review on all of these things. Impact, how many people will this impact? We've got a 1 through 5 kind of rating. And again, as you see here, we got 1,000, 1,000 to 3,000, 3,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 8,000, and then 10,000 people or more. Sustainability, will this be sustainable past 2026? I.e., does this program have a cliff? And what's going to happen then? You know, there should be definitely a concern that you think about as you fund things. And again, green, is this just a one-time expense? You're done, it's totally clean. Yellow, does this extend, does this have extending maintenance past 2026 or program expenses? Potentially. And then red is, it does need continuous, extensive funding, and it doesn't seem to have any path towards that. And then finally, feasibility, can this be obligated by 2024 and spent by 2026, no risks, unclear with risks, or high risk. So this should just give you a sense of what you're looking at as you go through these, of where do things kind of land on a risk spectrum. And then, of course, the county staff also looked at this and added their own notes along the lines of, is there existing or additional funding for this project that already is here at the county that could be accessed? Is there additional context for this project, i.e., are there relationships with these organizations? Is there something we should know about as we review these? And then finally, is there potential for collaboration, whether that's other governments or other organizations in the county that we might want to consider as we go through this? So hopefully this just gives all of this process a little more context and a little more help as you think through these proposals. So, with that being said, does anyone have any questions about that? And happy to answer these questions once you're actually looking at the proposals.
Right, that's when the questions will flood.
I'm sure they will.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Hunter.
Thank you, Chair. The collaboration issue, that's, to me, seems like a really important thing, because we're gonna leverage the money the best we can through collaboration sometimes. And maybe you mentioned, but how does that help? How is that placed in this conversation? Is collaboration just an idea, or have we built into this that it's a really important element?
Well, I think that's really up to you, right?
Okay.
So as you're looking through that, and
That's
everyone here is going to have a different set of values, right? And I think that if you apply those to, as you're reading them, you know, as you give thumbs up, thumbs down to things, that'll be important to you. I will say, one thing on collaboration is it's a process. And so I think as you start narrowing in on what you want to be doing, more work can happen on collaboration to pull in different groups and different people. And that's kind of, I think, how I would see this going and how it has gone in other places where we've worked, where you start to bring that in as you get more focused and more narrowly tailored on what you want to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
It seems that collaboration also impacts the scope of impact, as well as sustainability. So
Yes.
how we measure that is individual. Yes, Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is already planned, but I think it would be good when we get all the categorization, everything seems very, very helpful. And I'm sure I'll have some questions when we get the details on the first. It seems like, unless there's a reason we can't, that it'd be good transparency to post this on Access Kent, like all of the information, so like everybody can see what commissioners are looking at, and in addition, at the same time, kind of the scope of all the requests, that the public should know that at the same time that we do. You know, I know Commissioner Bulkowski said the other day that, you know, $100 million isn't a whole lot of money, and if we have $2 billion in requests, he might be right, you know, so I think it'd be good to just publish all of this content as soon as commissioners see it.
Yeah, I think the intent is that this will be made available, be posted, and then there'll be various stages where we begin to do the decisional process that winnows this down, that too will get posted. And then, of course, when we get to the ultimate deliberation and voting, you bet it'll all be posted.
And that was our commitment during the various forums that we did as well.
Yeah. Commissioner Bolte.
Thank you, and I apologize, I have to leave because I had no clue we would just be starting this at 12:30 today. But I was unable to go to the last couple of work sessions, so I hate when people do this, so I am very sorry, I apologize. On the rankings, though, are we gonna get, and maybe this is a question for you guys, are we gonna get the entire list of every single application, not shoved into this many, you had, this many projects for parks? I would like to see every single application, and then I would like to see your color code.
Yeah.
And then are we going to also get what you rejected based on eligibility, but is there a way for that particular organization to appeal that?
Yeah, well, appeal, we're not using the word appeal.
Okay.
Question
Convince,
maybe is the
change your
right term,
mind.
but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the next presentation from Jenny, where we're trying to walk through
Okay.
that process, because that's been the most difficult part, is to find a process that allows us to manage this into a decision.
Yeah, but in the essence of transparency, I mean, I would really like to see every single project
Oh, you'll get every
listed.
single project.
And as I'm looking at your timeline, it looks like we're gonna get that September one, but we'd have till the 16th to weigh in, correct?
Well, there's 2
22nd.
tracks. There
22nd.
are those that are preliminarily determined not eligible.
Okay,
So the idea here is that we want to address those initially. If there are follow-up questions on
Okay.
those deemed to be ineligible,
okay,
we'd like to address that by the 16th,
okay.
so that
Are-
those that aren't eligible and aren't going to get considered because of that, we would want to send them notification promptly.
Are we gonna have input on those before they get notification that they're not eligible, or are we gonna
That's what
see
the
that?
16 days is for, between the
Okay.
first, when you will see which of the
Okay.
projects were flagged as ineligible.
Are we reconvening to look at that, or is it just one-offs?
Well, we'll be reconvening, but we had not reconvened for purposes of that follow-up. It really was for purposes of, is there information that individual commissioners want to raise
Okay,
or have further consideration? And do we take another look at it? As you say, this is a bit of an evolving process, so.
okay, thank you, sorry, I'm sorry. I have to
No,
go.
that's a critical part of it.
I know that we're about to, we will be getting access to this portal and we'll see which ones were rejected on eligibility, but could you speak a little bit to were there common, themes that were deemed ineligible to kind of prepare ourselves as we start this review?
Yeah, I mean, due to the fact that you have such a large revenue replacement availability, really ineligibility is pretty black and white. Things that were directly against the heart of the ARPA, bill. So for instance, literally things that put people inside that had no additional health benefit, that weren't in a qualified census tract. So we just couldn't tie any single line to anything else. That's the type of thing that you're gonna see being ineligible, for the most part. Trying to think of what else, but that, I think you're gonna find the thread is mostly that it literally goes against the spread of COVID. It is the opposite of what you wanna see happen, I think, is generally speaking what you're gonna find.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And then, there are some, revenue replacement's been talked about a lot. And I'm guessing these will likely be flagged as yellow, but if there's a project that kind of, at first glance, really clearly looks like it would belong under one bucket, but doesn't meet those circumstances, is it simply a matter of designating it as revenue replacement, or does that run us a risk of violation of the guidelines?
So I'm doing this right now, you'll notice under, I'm gonna go back up one. So under eligibility, impact, sustainability, and feasibility, there's kind of a scale, but there's also a comment spot. And I'm going through right now, I'm personally adding those notes specifically around eligibility. We're saying, look, this is only gonna be eligible under revenue replacement, or this could potentially be here, but, if it's not red, you could always use it under revenue replacement. If something's red, the assumption is it's not even eligible under revenue replacement. There's no path forward here, right? And if there could potentially, I will put that in the notes, so yeah.
And then my last question, just because I saw recently Treasury evolved its guidelines on investments specifically tied to affordable housing and seeing its higher ranking, that it used to be that affordable housing could not be, or rather loans could not be, these funds could not be used for loans unless they matured before 2026, or they went through this very complex formula that didn't really make sense. Now, provided that there's a covenant or some kind of security that while the loan is existing, the affordability restrictions are there too. In the event that we were to do something like that, revenue from that, if there is an interest charged to it, would that be similarly restricted towards those ARPA funds themselves, or?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I've got a ARPA housing specialist we're bringing in next week to kind of work through this and make sure that we're all aligned on that, so, yep.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? Yes, Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Sorry, I'm just looking for my notes I was just jotting here. Has that eligibility or lack thereof, has that been formally or informally communicated to any applicants as of yet?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, informally, like the conversation that says, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, okay. And I guess I just wanted to, in general, express a little bit of displeasure that we're unable to see the list yet. I have people who have applied and have said, I've applied and you've seen the proposal. And I'm like, no, I haven't. And frankly, it makes for us to be, if somebody wants to have a conversation about a proposal they've put in, we can't have a conversation with them unless they go out and send it to us. There's an assumption being made that we have that information. And I know that initially we, had July and August laid out for the time that we were going to be, identifying projects for funding, and now we're going to be into the Labor Day as we get the list. So I just want to make sure that moving forward we have a better line of communication. These are pretty substantial policy and appropriation decisions that we're going to have to make as a board, and I just want to make sure that we have all the information that we need moving forward. And I understand there's been a lot of proposals, there's a lot that goes into the process, but and I know we keep jumping on Commissioner Volkowski. It's not a lot of money, which I understand his point too. But it also is probably the only time that this board will have this kind of
Right.
funding to consider. So I want to make sure that we're able to communicate and we're educated on where we are before we have to make a decision as a group on how we're going to vote.
Well, I think that we have distributed, you should have already a master list. It's in a relatively abbreviated form, but the full list of the proposals have been distributed out. Now, granted, I've looked at it, you can't tell a whole lot by looking at, other than who it is that proposed it, what category it's in, and maybe some estimate on what size of the project is. So not, at least in my judgment, nothing that you could make any kind of prejudgment about. And so, yeah, the work that I think we've done at this point is to try to find a way that narrows this down so that when you do that heavy lift of work, you're equipped with as much information as we can. So one, we've identified those that should be called out for ineligibility. So you're not spending a lot of time analyzing, reviewing a project that at the end of the day can't be even considered. Two, that you are equipped with the information that staff have been able to accumulate that may be assisting, may be valuable for a process of looking at that and measuring it. And three, creating the analysis within a framework that we can actually move from here to completion. And as staff know, that has been the most difficult part of this conversation, is how do we go from 300 proposals or more.
That was the amount that came in the last week they were due, the last
Yeah,
few days.
so you take all of that, there's no way that we have enough time in our lifetime to deliberate on all of those. So it's finding the mechanism that can legitimately move us down that port without wasting a lot of people's time. Because by the time we get to September 1, you guys are all going to be calling me and cursing me, I'm sure, because you're going to be spending incredible numbers of hours working through this data for purposes of assessing, measuring, and making judgments about, I mean, even under the best of cases, 150, maybe more proposals. And each of these proposals, multi-pages with assessments and evaluations. This is not an easy, this is a heavy lift, and every one of us are going to be having to do a significant amount of work. And I got it, I would rather have been doing this in July than now. Well, that's probably not true. But it's just a lot. And so I hear what
Yeah.
you're saying, and I know the quicker we can get the stuff in your hands at this point to get going, the better.
Yeah, I think it's a parallel effort as far as I'm concerned, that we should be educating ourselves on what the nitty-gritty of some of these proposals are, but also allowing, staff and our consultant to do the work of trying to narrow that for us so that we can,
Yeah.
be well-educated. So
Can
I
also-
appreciate it.
I also want to address something else you raised, and the fact is that everyone is, as elected officials, will make our own decisions about how deep we are going to engage these proposers. I sure, if you're anything like me, you're getting inquiries daily from people who have submitted in applications, and they want to have lunch with me, they want to talk about it, they want to bring people in to talk to me about how great this proposal is. And at least I have so far said, I don't think that's fair to the entire universe of proposers to start letting those that have the nerve to call me and insist upon a conversation to do that. I can all but guarantee that once these get into our deliberation process, that's going to be tenfold. So how much do we allow these people to politic us outside of the process? I think we have some recommendations, but I can't dictate how much you do that. But I will say that if you open your door and say, I'll talk to anybody who's got a proposal, you better have a big door.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point, Chair, and I think that the concern, as each of us representing our constituents comes when there's something that's in your backyard and it's your constituents coming to you and saying, hey, can we talk about this? But I understand I totally understand where we're coming from, so I appreciate the discussion, thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Volkowski.
Sorry, I had to step out. Did anybody ask a question about the Open Meetings Act? Just, it seemed like that was a pretty harsh reading of the Open Meetings Act, that we cannot have a meeting of a quorum outside of public, but if, Commissioner Burl and I have a conversation about one of these proposals, that's fine, correct?
Yeah, I think we've asked, I don't know where it is, but I thought it was in the process, we've asked for an OMA opinion from legal to help us understand where are the soft points, where are the difficult points. This process, and we get to Jenny's presentation, there's a number of unique kind of components about this, about how we're going to try to move this down to a more narrow consideration. But I think if the question is, can you and I go out to lunch and talk about these proposals and say, what did you think about those?
Yeah.
Certainly, there's nothing else that has come before us in any other category that would preclude us from having that conversation under the OMA.
Right.
Am I right?
Correct. Yeah.
Now, if we get 6 of our friends together and you bring 6 of your friends together and they're all
And
commissioners, we got a problem.
Totally.
Yeah.
Hence why you invite us once a year to your caucus. So, I mean.
I thought you just busted in. I didn't know it was an
Oh, no, you
invite.
buy us dinner once a year.
Yeah, I love going to the Secu Center.
Anyways, so in all seriousness,
But-
again, that we can have, again, within totally the bounds of the law, we can have conversations individually.
Non-violating caucuses.
Not, just none of that stuff. And as long as we don't have a majority of us in the room, that's the way I understand it. Next door, allegedly, they never have meetings with more than 3
That's in the
commissioners.
review, isn't it?
And that doesn't violate OMA,
Let's, Linda,
so.
We are working that up to try and give you bullet points so that it's easy to grab onto and hold onto and take with you with regard to whether it's these meetings or others. But that being said, one of the things that has been found to be problematic is when you can't do a round robin type idea to try and solicit or deliberate one at a time with the goal of trying to avoid open
we'll
meetings.
make a decision by meeting with each one of you.
Right.
Got it. Yep.
So, we all know that, given the number of proposals out here, that there's very likely to be a fair number of folks in our community that are going to be disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
And disappointment can sometimes be lead to completely upset or concern or belief that they've been mistreated in some way in the process, and that's what generally leads to a FOIA request. So I think we're assuming that every step of this is going to be subjected at some point to FOIA. Including potentially your communications on county platforms. David, now where? Oh, I'm sorry, any other questions for David?
Every time you say David, I'm like,
I always say Commissioner Bukowski
oh,
for
okay,
you, remember?
all right, but still,
I got it.
trained to respond.
Any other questions? All right, Jenny, you have a presentation that's going to walk us through a process that moves us from where we are today to final decision-making.
Yes.
One clarification to a question that was raised earlier about whether the county department proposals were captured in the community engagement data. David was correct that they are not, except that zoo proposal and road commission did come through the portal as opposed to county department proposal process. So
I mean,
those are,
technically, they're not departments.
Right.
But
Right.
to make sure.
just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure that was clear. Also want to thank the entire board for your involvement in the community engagement process. It's really appreciated and important to our community. And now that we've got all that process completed and David's report today, as the chair said, we're very much turning our attention to the process moving forward on making decisions. So that's what we'll talk about today. And this is a proposed approach. And of course, as time moves on, we may need to make tweaks and adjustments, and we're absolutely happy to be flexible with you and make sure your needs are met. So as you've heard on September 1st, we will send to you access to all of the proposals, every single one. And that will be in an electronic format that Jesse in our department is designing in a very user-friendly manner that is almost like an online book. You can flip through the pages, read the descriptions and the assessment that David was describing with the red, green, yellow, and comments. It's very nicely laid out. So you'll get that electronically from us on September 1st, if not before. Linda's memo will also be included in the material you receive that day, as well as some initial input from the county administrator and his team on the proposals that we find that Guidehouse has found is eligible, just to give you a little more information on which to work as you're reading through. We'll also use this time to send an online survey that will start the process of filtering the 300 proposals, less than that in terms of eligibility, into a group that's easier for the board to consider in more detail. So that survey will ask you to select yes for the proposal to continue under consideration, or no for the proposal to not continue under consideration at this time. I can see that changing maybe over time as you continue to learn more, but the idea here is to get some yeses and nos to lower the total number of proposals that you're considering at this point.
Can I interject at this point? Because we all have our own measuring sticks, right? A hard grader or an easy grader. At the end of this process, we have to say no to a lot of good projects. And at the end of the process, we have to have this narrowed down to the scope of what's fundable with what we have. No matter how much you think 100 million is a lot, it won't be a lot in this conversation. So I'm encouraging you to be fairly demanding of these projects in that first round, because if it's not, and at the first round of voting, we still have 200 projects that everybody wants to continue to look at, we're going to have to go through another evaluative process, and then maybe another evaluative process, because my intention is not to open up for open deliberation on 200 projects. It will never be done. So, you know, again, you use your own measurement, but keep in mind, the purpose of this is to get these projects down to the most effective, most useful, most transformational projects we can get, not anything that smells good.
If I could make one other comment, and that would be that after you make that first cut, it isn't like you're taking a vote and making a decision, a firm decision. What we're trying to do is winnow it so that you have, as a group of 19, something that's workable. There will be other opportunity to say, you know, I think we really missed the boat on this one. I think we should consider this one. But ultimately, this is a process of taking this funnel and finding ways to work it so that you can focus in a way that's productive. And not get lost in the weeds of trying to deliberate 300 projects all at one time.
And I think you're getting into a section, there's probably a screen where we can move a project that got voted down, potentially move it back onto the list if we decide to do that.
But what we'll find at each stage is that there may be a lot of consensus on things that you do want to consider further, and maybe a lot of consensus on things that aren't ranked as highly to the total board, and that's why the process can be valuable.
Thank you, Chair. You know, looking at that, I am wondering though, and I'm thinking about, for instance, the exercises we had at our board retreat, that to have something that's reflective of this 19-person body, something that might also speed up the process of winnowing down to priorities, and also making sure that widowed down list is as accurate a reflection of the whole 19. I'm almost wondering if something similar to the rankings that were used prior in our board retreat would get us a more accurate result, and also might help us get to the meat quicker. And certainly not suggesting that we rank all 300, but if each commissioner was given, I say this is an arbitrary number, 20 to apply, and then you start to see that might not only help show what elevates to the top to give the most consideration, but that list will be, I think, more reflective of all 19 commissioners, and can end up creating a final product that is more of a synthesis of all 19 of us.
Yeah, and we have spent a lot of time talking about a grading system versus a yes or no system, and the pluses and minuses of those. And I think that the grading system, perhaps the value is it does allow sort of a measuring judgment from everybody into the picture. The downside is it does not move us very quickly to a decision of being able to identify those projects that are most likely to be accepted by this board. So, and maybe we should go through all of these steps, and you'll see whether the alternative ways of getting projects back into consideration addresses that. So.
Commissioner Bolter raised a good question about what if we have questions about the items that were deemed ineligible. So we are very happy to take any questions you have on that point. If you send them to us, questions about any of the eligibility, feasibility, sustainability ratings, we will work with Guidehouse to get answers to those. We'd like to extend that opportunity beyond the 16th to September 23rd, give you a little bit more time, and then we would still have the answers to you by September 29th. And we'll take them and answer them as they come in. We won't wait until the end there. So happy to take any questions you have as you go through the documents. So our proposed deadline for getting your survey results is September 30th. That would give you the month of December to review the proposals and respond to that survey. We would like to begin sending letters to
September, right? I mean,
September.
September.
just don't want anybody to think they get to do this at Christmas.
Did I say December?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I can tell my colleagues back here heard December too by the. Yeah, well, that would be too much time. You don't want that much time. Yeah, September 30. We'd also like to start at that point letting proposers know if for reasons of ineligibility, we will not be awarding ARPA dollars to them. We would include in that communication some information about why they're proposal was ineligible, perhaps some alternative funding sources if there are some, and provide county contact information if they have any questions and want to follow up with us. So Commissioner Bolter asked if we would be reconvening as a body before that happens. That's not currently the plan, but we would like to start at that point, sending those communications so that folks aren't waiting around too long.
And that's assuming that the questions don't move an ineligible project from red to yellow.
Right, that could happen, right. So we would then propose to have a compilation of the survey results back to the board on October 6th. Give you a chance to review what the results of all the input on yes, continue considering, or no, don't continue considering looks like. We would also, at this point, as the chair mentioned, if we still have a very large number of proposals in the mix, consider doing another round of rating, perhaps a design like Commissioner Wooden mentioned, if we need to get it down to a smaller number than we have after the survey. And the way we would present the survey results is to show the proposals that received a majority of yes responses and the dollar amounts associated with those proposals, just so you can see a total of what are the majority of you interested in and how much money does that add up to. And we would also use this opportunity to give any other comments from administration that would maybe help you as you continue to consider the proposals that rose to the top, more information that might be relevant and useful.
When I said there would be a chance to take a project that otherwise didn't get the votes, let's say it got, it was all but 2 no votes. This would still be an opportunity for somebody to say, I know it got a universal no, but I really think this, and it ought to be moved up to the continue to review list. Again, I think if you really have a compelling argument, make it. That's what our job is. At the same time, I hope that we're not going to go through every project that didn't make the list and try to, but that's the opportunity. So there would be a possibility. Yes, Commissioner Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Kind of going back to what Commissioner Coleman pointed out as far as making the public aware, is it, we're going to be getting all these proposals on September 1st. Will that information be distributed to the public on that day too?
Yeah, again, that'll be posted online.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, this also came to mind that because this is an exercise that will direct our decision, should our survey responses, are they subject to OMA and thus must be released no matter what, or are they simply FOIAble?
Spent a lot of time talking on that one too. Linda?
Written documents are generally FOIA. Open meetings is for the discussion and the deliberation in a room like this. So if your survey results are more documentary, because they're electronic documents and things like that, yes, they're subject to FOIA. There are certain restrictions we can do with regard to work sessions and things like that, and internal frank communications, but we would have to look at it as, as the survey comes out, how it's phrased. I can work with Jenny to see what we can do on that, to make sure that we can use, to the extent legitimate, the open, frank discussion type exemption to FOIA. But
Again,
the whole idea is transparency.
It is transparency, but in this respect, the survey is not a decision process, right? So all it does is it tests a broad market of 19 people's response on it. The decision process is when that comes to us and we say, okay, if that survey result says these are the only 75 projects that we consider, that's the decision process, right?
And that's the distinction between OMA and the deliberation
Yeah.
decision versus FOIA and government documents.
But if I understand correctly, even if it's not an OMA-covered action, it is FOIAble.
The survey result would be FOIAble.
Okay, thank you.
Where were we? Oh, yes, Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Chair. Backing up a little bit, we talked about the information, Commissioner Antor just asked about that information being made available to the public when we get it on the 1st. Will that include the color-coded analysis of
Yes.
the projects? Okay, all right. Appreciate that, thanks.
Yeah, it'll have the projects, the information submitted by the proposer. It'll have Guidehouse's measurement of those factors that they described. If there are comments from staff with respect to each project, that will be included in it. Not necessarily, but if they do have it, that'll be included. So you could have, I don't know, 10 pages per project, is that,
Most of them are not that long.
thank goodness? Okay.
Yeah, some proposers did provide a lot of words, others did not, so it's a varies.
But
And
you would
just
get
to-
all of that.
Yeah, perfect. And then just to clarify, like, how will this be hosted for public consumption? Will it be on Access Kent?
Yes, we have a kentcountyarpa.com website.
Imagine it'll just be a big PDF, probably.
You know, we're exploring now how to make it most user-friendly on the site. So we figured out a way to make it very user-friendly for the board, and now we're looking at how to post it most accessible.
I think that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Antar.
All right, Chair, one more. So if somebody submits something with a number, let's say they're asking for $30 million, something like that. Does that, and that's their only number that they put in, they didn't put any provisions for or less, or, you know, does that disqualify that I mean, would we go back and look, maybe make an offer that will give them a little less than that? Or is it all come down to the way they worded their proposal?
We're getting to that. I think that's in one of the later where we work out whether we have to move the numbers or can we move the numbers? Because some of these projects are not going to be
Right.
negotiable. That's, to do the project, it takes 30 million, period. Some of them, they're going to be rateable.
Okay, I apologize, I gotta leave, so
Okay.
I'll get that information later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you would get, oh, excuse me.
So the voting process, like as we go through, we electronically say yes, no, yes, no. So just from like a transparency process, like I feel like, my yes, nos should be published, like, along with everybody else's yes, nos, just for like transparency, like, Mr. Jones, ought to know, like, what I said on, the esports proposal without it requiring like a FOIA. So I would request that happens, but I just want to make sure that, like, there's not going to be any, like, legal eagles out there saying, like, well, you're taking an official board action outside of an open meeting by virtue of saying, yes, no on 500 projects.
Again, the idea was this is a survey, this is testing the sentiment, but it's not a decision. So that survey can come back in a report saying, here's the 150, here's the number of yeses, nos, and so on. But there's no decision, there's no deliberation until you see the report, and then the board will have to make the decision. Do we want to pass a resolution approving which ones we go forward based upon the survey, up and down? That's your decision, and you're going to have to go public with that vote. Or we could say, there's a motion to amend that, I'd like to move project 6 that otherwise didn't pass the test in the survey, keep it on the review list. Everybody's going to have to vote on that. So the idea was that the survey's a tool to get us to a decision process. It's not the decision.
Great.
And that speaks to the next step. You would receive all the information on the 6th of October, and we would hold a special meeting on the 11th to talk through the results of the survey in the manner that Chair Steck just described. The goal would be to bring to the forefront the board's, as a body's, highest priority proposals to examine further. And we would like, at the end of the October 11th meeting, if possible, to have consensus on what are the highest priority proposals, and we would invite those proposers in to present to the board what they have proposed as another opportunity for you to learn a little more about the highest priority proposals.
Commissioner Hensy.
11th is not a particularly good day for a few of us here, because after legislative, we have a full day of senior millage review to do.
Okay.
That whole week is very difficult.
Okay.
Or most of that week is difficult.
Thank you for that. We'll relook at the schedule and make
we
it more accommodating.
We can schedule this at about 5:30. You guys finish about 5.
You can do my door to door the next time.
I forgot about that too. I'm sorry. We'll have to figure something. What days? You 3 days that week?
We've got 3 days and then the following Monday, so.
All right, we'll get,
But that, right now, that's a terrible day.
yep,
Thank you.
understand.
So the next step would be, we've identified 2 days here to hold work sessions where for the proposals you've identified as the highest priority, the folks would come in and present what they've proposed. We would keep it relatively short per proposal, just 15 minutes for presentation and Q&A. There would be no deliberation or decision-making at these meetings, and it would be voluntary to attend. If you'd like to hear from the presenters, you're more than welcome, but I know it's a heavy lift on your time, so this will be the next step so you could learn a little bit more.
And it's not decisional, so I think we can do this virtually as well. So you could tap into this virtually, so we'll make sure that's doable. And this, so speaking of senior millage, this is patterned after what we do at senior millage.
And if more time was needed, we could add another date as well. And then next, we would move into the board deliberation and selection process. We propose to start that on November 10th in a work session. And how exactly it would look will maybe depend on how the process has gone so far and how many proposals are still in the mix. But conversation and looking at the total dollar amount available and how much each proposal is requesting, we would sort of work together to come to a consensus on which projects to fund and for how much. And Chair Steck, you might want to add some more comment there.
Yeah, again, I think this is where we move from just the concept of the proposal is something that we're interested in moving into, to the point of, well, what's the funding number that's necessary for this particular project? Does it have to be the 20 million asked? Can it be less than that? If it's 20 million and we don't want to spend that much money on that project as a whole, that's what we conclude, then it probably won't survive, right? We'll move on to others. But that's the tough decision process because ultimately, just as with senior millage, when you add it all up, you got to have a number that you got. You can't spend what you don't have, at least not here.
And we're holding
Sorry.
November 17th as another day, in case you need more time.
Yep. So, go ahead.
And then the last step, similar to what you did last January with the initial $10 million allocation of ARPA funds, we would bring the decision of the whole board at that previous work session to finance for vote and then to the full board. These are the last 2 dates in the year that these meetings could be held. If our process is moving along super smoothly, we can do it earlier in November. That would be perfectly fine.
So if we require more deliberation time, it's going to be scheduled before December 6th, because these dates are kind of fixed. Because my intention is not to start this all over again with the new commission next year. Yes?
Apologize for being the squeaky wheel, but and maybe I missed this at some point or forgotten. Are we, as we're considering our yeses and nos, are we attempting to allocate like the full remaining 117 million? Are we like designing, 10% to hold back for,
Right.
future, like?
My intention, that's a good question. My intention was when we do that first deliberation, is it October 11, whenever that is, that we would start with the reaffirmation. We've gone into this process saying we spent 11, 10 something. We would hold back 25%, and we would put the rest of the money through this evaluative process. I think we have to make that decision going into it. And look, here's where we started. Do we still hold that at the end of this process, we'll have allocated 90 million, which means we're going to have X million still in the pot for addressing such things as new projects that come down the road, or these projects need to have extra money in order to be successful or something, whatever else it is. I think we just have to make that decision. it also gives us that flexibility. If we do get down to the very difficult discussion about, if we want both of these projects, we just can't quite make them add up. They both have to have that amount of money for them to be successful. Do we pull some money out of our pot? But I think ultimately, we have to make that decision as a group. Yes, Mr. Womack.
Having 19 commissioners covering all of Kent County, we had some discussion today about some of the needs in specific areas. Will we have any discussion on what metrics that we should prioritize so we're kind of close to the same page, and what metrics we can legally consider as we look at these proposals?
I think what we'll have is from either Guidehouse or from us, which will be sort of the reminder about, here's the spending limitations and parameters that we can use. Now, I would expect that to the extent that there's a legal difficulty for any of the projects because of the restrictions in ARPA, Guidehouse will flag that for us. If it's a project that's not doable, we should know that. If it's a project that has concerns, they'll know about it. But if it is, all right, look, if there's a suggestion or a recommendation in ARPA that you target the identified target areas. And
Okay.
there are 3 in Kent County. I've kind of forgotten, Dave, how many do we have in Kent County? Okay,
It's in the map.
there's a number of them, but yeah, so I mean, that's the kind of thing we should all have in our heads when we go into that evaluative process.
Okay, will we have a chance to look at those targeted areas, or should I get with you one-on-one, or will that something might come up at one of our meetings where we can identify?
Well, I don't anticipate that we'll be debating beforehand, well, look, when we make our decision, let's all decide that we want to put X number of dollars in 49507. That consideration should come in each individual commissioner's consideration. And then if that's critical, then at the point of debate, you should say something about that.
And in some of our conversations, like when we had the CARES Act committee, it was great because we were able to see some of the needs of urban areas, but also because we had that conversation, some of us commissioners from urban areas were able to hear the concerns of the rules and the importance of the broadband expansion and how they were suffering during the pandemic when their children had to get online for education. So will we have any time where we get a discussion where we can hear from the different commissioners, from their constituents, what's needed in these different areas in Kent County? Because we'll be voting on all of them and choosing from all of them, no matter what location we're from, but just getting a better grip with these ARPA funds, what are the needs of these different villages, townships, and cities?
That is not built in the form process at this point, other than at the point of considering up or down on the survey results or the ultimate decision on the projects for funding. Each individual commissioner is left to their right to step forward and say, here's a project that I think is critical to this community or that community or whatever.
Thank you for the clarity, Chair. Thank you. Exactly what I was looking for.
Make one other point. What's different between ARPA and CARES, one of the many things, is that each of the local governments also did receive ARPA money. So one of the questions that we're asking our local government partners, if they did ask for county ARPA money, are they matching that with some of their local ARPA money as well? And that can help, I think, give some indication of the importance of some of the sub-regional applications in different parts of the county, whether the local units also invested some of their money in that ask.
Thank you. That's very important. And I just want to thank the county in the presentation to communities and cities, villages, townships, that I think they put a lot of clarity of the difference between the ARPA and the CARES in the different areas we're going to cover, and really putting an emphasis on infrastructure and what these ARPA funds are really for. So I think the county did a good job making sure people's expectations align with what these funds are earmarked for. Thank you.
Mr. Wooden.
Just as a
Clarify, because we talked about target area. By target area, we mean those, essentially the CDBG eligible census tracts in Kent County, or?
Well, it's the identified census tracts within ARPA itself. There are certain 27 of them.
Qualified census tracts. It may be completely aligned with the CDBG, I'm not sure.
But more or less, it's there, you know, obviously there's a large degree in kind of the, I'll even call it the greater Core 6, and the fact that there are a number of them that are just outside of the kind of Core 6 boundaries, and then there are a number of them kind of by Cedar Springs in that area. That's more or less, obviously, we'll see a map, but that's more or less when we're referring to target areas, that's what we're referring to. Thank you.
I'll just add one more point about the online presence. We've created a dashboard that provides information about all the ideas and the survey results that we got during the community engagement period. And it's a lot of detail. You could read every single idea that was submitted, but that would take a lot of time. And you can filter them by location where the idea came from and other filters. So that'll be on the website also.
So again, encourage, if you have questions at any stage of this, ask them. Let's get as much as we can by way of information. Again, it's a lot of homework. I'm sorry about that, but I don't know how we can get there without doing the hard work. We're trying to make this so that you can do your work on your time schedule as opposed to everybody every time having to come here and sit for 4 hours or whatever it is. So that we can make the best use of the deliberation time, and where there are easy solutions, that is generally broad consensus of a yes or a no, let's catch it early on. All right, any other questions? If not, this is a public meeting, so it's an opportunity for public comment. If you have any comment to the commissioners, you may do so at this time. You have 3 minutes.
I'm here. So, commissioners, I actually have the guy. Hey, Gordon, can you hear me? All right, see if you guys can hear them. But this is the guy I was telling you about that hosts the esports tournaments in California, that has the partnership with the Sacramento Kings, and also the guy who actually got the notice from the DeVos family and the Denver Nuggets, if you guys can hear him. Can you talk about it a little bit, Gordon?
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. So who am I speaking with?
This, the whole Kent County Commission Board.
Oh, nice to meet you all. My name is Gordon. I'm the president of College Esports International. So we have a partnership with the Sacramento Kings and their gaming professional team called the Sacramento Kings Guard Game, and they play in the NBA 2K Professional League. So we started really with doing some creative projects with them, with bringing in colleges to at the Golden One Center, which is like one of the nicer arenas in the NBA. It's only a couple years old, beautiful state-of-the-art arena. And we started hosting college competition to really showcase education in conjunction with the fun of esports. So basically anything that's related to a career pathway in technology, innovation, whether it's broadcasting or digital marketing or, all the things that the kids don't realize they're learning skill sets in through their love and passion of gaming. We introduce them to industry leaders and professionals so that as they're having fun at the tournament, they're also learning about different career pathways. So that's what CESI is all about.
Can you talk a little bit about the Orlando Magics and the Denver Nuggets reaching out to you?
Yeah. So since we're in our second year partnership with Sacramento Kings, and because of that, we host schools from all over the country. The one that was most recent was the Colorado team from Boulder. And after they came to our event, they started sharing out to the Denver Nuggets about what we were doing. So now the Denver Nuggets are very interested in doing the same thing we're doing in Sacramento at the Denver Nuggets arena. And then, the word just keeps spreading. And then we got contacted by the Orlando Magic through one of our technology partners that's helping us build an NFT marketplace as a fundraiser. and he's introduced us now to the Orlando Magic, who are talking about bringing our show to Florida. So we are very excited about the potential of kind of partnering with the NBA 2K teams in their league to do similar kind of activations, because it's really a positive experience for the students to see how playing esports could actually prepare them for a future in a fun setting and fun environment that's educational, technology driven, and also with everything that's happening with esports and its growth. It's a $198 billion industry, so it's already surpassed the music and movie industry as the #1 form of entertainment on the globe. So that's what we're all about, trying to bring those connections, and we just keep expanding. And I was very excited to meet DeAndre at the Esports Trade Association conference that we just came from in Chicago. And so very excited to meet you all.
Thanks, Gordon. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'll be reaching out to you.
Yeah.
I also
you,
want to
DeAndre.
say real quick, if I can, the Grand Rapids Business Journal did an article on me, and somebody from the GVSU reached out to me. She's a professor in sports management, and she wants to get some interns to work with me on this potential project in the school, the college also. And then the guy who has the only esports training facility read that article. So the only West Michigan esports training facility that we have, I'm going to go toward that because the guy seen the article. So my hard work is paying off. Hope you guys like what you heard. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm going to use my phone to help me speak. Hi, everyone. My name is Zenaiva Jimenez. I am a resident of Hartside Downtown neighborhood and also an employee at Safe Haven Ministries, a domestic violence agency here in Kent County. And I'm also a member of the Kent County Domestic Violence Community Coordinator Response Team, also known as the DVCCRT. The DVCCRT is a multidisciplinary team that's made up of over 25 nonprofits, government entities, and public entities. I'm here to talk a little bit about our proposal for ARPA funds. So far this year, there have been at least 9 domestic violence-related homicides in Kent County, which puts us on track to double last year's numbers. I don't have to tell you all that we have a community violence problem here in Kent County, more specifically a domestic violence problem. As the Director of Housing Services at Safe Haven Ministries, I can share my perspective of how our system is failing survivors here in Kent County, more specifically by not holding abusers accountable, which often makes it very difficult for survivors to leave domestic violence relationships. At Safe Haven, we offer an emergency safe shelter as one of our services that we offer. So with the funding that we have proposed for ARPA, we would be working with the DVCCRT to fund Domestic Violence Community Action Network, which would help to fund much-needed domestic violence court, as well as establish a much stronger community response to domestic violence, which would help hold abusers more accountable here in Kent County.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? If not, miscellaneous, anyone? No? Then we are adjourned. Thank you.